Hey boys and girls, so today we're going to be going over Unit 13, Lesson 3, which is the equation of a circle. And in order for us to find the equation of a circle, we're going to have to complete the square. All right, so we'll get more into that as we head to the next page. Right now, just starting off by looking at the do now, it says segment AB is the diameter of circle M. All right, so I'm going to kind of stop right there and I just want to discuss what that's telling you right from the get-go. So let's say I had circle M. I know that M is the center, so I can label that right off the bat. And if I know that AB is a diameter, I know that it goes through the center. So it starts at one side like A, and it makes its way over to the opposite side like B. All right, so this would be a diameter. And I know you guys know that from the other lessons, but it's a little bit different the way that it's presented in these questions. All right, so just remember that's really what the diameter would be in a circle. So now they're telling you that the coordinates of A are -4, 3. So I just already went ahead and plotted that. And the coordinates of M are 1, 5. Okay, and it's plotted. They want to know the coordinates of B. So I know that the distance from A to M has to be the exact same as M to B, because both of these are radii, right? They go from the center to the edge, from the center to the edge. All right. I can't look at the distance from A to M though, because I can't count these boxes. I could use Pythagorean theorem, but that's kind of over the top. So I'm going to show you just a shortcut, which is slope. So I'm going to find the slope of A to M. So it looks like I have to rise 2 and then I have to run 5. So I know that the slope from A to M is 2/5. That means that the slope from M to B also has to be 2/5. All right, so I'm just going to count that up. I'm going to go up another 2 and run another 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And I know these have to be the coordinates for B. All right, so if I go back and I count that out, it looks like it's +6 and then boop, +7. So I know the coordinates of B are 6, 7. And again, I know that the slopes have to be the same because these distances from the center to the edge, right, those should be the same as well. All right. So now if I jump on to number 2, it's very similar. So it says line segment AB is a diameter of circle O. So the same thing, I'm just going to draw a little example here. If I know that the circle is O, that means O has to be the center. And if I know that line segment AB is a diameter, same thing as up top. I know that A is on one side, B is on the other, and when I connect them, they have to go through the center to become a diameter. All right, so if I know that circle O has coordinates 6, 8, when I plotted 6, 8, I was able to label that with the letter O, all right, because I know it's circle O and that's the center. If they're telling me that the coordinates of A are 4, 2, which again I already plotted, 4, 2 is A, we want to know what the coordinates of B are going to be. All right, so I'm going to use the same approach as I did in number 1. I'm going to find the slope of A to O, and then I'm going to apply it again from O to B, all right, to try to get that coordinate. So I'm going to just write down, because I always have to show my work, what's the slope of A to O? Well, it's rise over run, so if I count it out, it looks like I have to rise 6, and then I'm going to run 2. All right, so I'm going to write that down. So I know that the slope from O to B, right, my other radii here, would have to be the same. It would have to be 6/2 as well. So I'm just going to count that out. So from O, I have to rise 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and then run 2, 1, 2, and this would have to be my new coordinates for B. All right, and if I look here, I can see that it's 8 all the way up to 14. So my coordinates of B are 8, 14. Okay, all right. As we move through today's lesson, it's definitely a lot of algebra. Those of you who enjoyed Algebra 1 last year or the year before, you're definitely going to be super successful with today. For those of you who might not have enjoyed it as much, that's okay. I'm not saying you won't be successful, but if you need to pause the video at any time, you know, for any of you guys, please do that. We're going to be going over a lot of math today. All right, try to just stick with me. All right, so as I flip here and I go to the second page, which is the guided practice, the first question is pretty simple. It says graph all of the points that are equidistant from the origin. So I'm going to just stop and highlight that right from the get-go. If I want to be equidistant, I'm hoping you guys remember that another way of saying that is equal distance. So I want to be equal distance from the origin, all right? And I want that distance to be 5 units. So I'm going to go ahead and highlight that as well. It says, what figure is formed? So I always like to underline my question to make sure I answer it at the end. All right, so as I look here, if I want to figure out what points are equidistant from the origin, and I want those to be 5 units away, well, the origin is 0, 0. So if I want to be 5 away, I could go 5 up, I could go 5 down, I could go 5 to the right, or I could go 5 to the left, okay? I could also go diagonally, but I can't count that exactly, so I'm not going to point these extra, I'm not going to plot those extra points, all right? But I will go ahead and try to connect these 5 units that are equidistant from the origin and see what I get. So if I start connecting them, oh my gosh, guys, you totally have it. It looks like I'm creating a circle. So what figure is formed? A circle. Boom. All right. And then this is really leading us into today's notes. So the equation of a circle is always in center radius form, okay? Here's my center. It's AB. And I know that R is going to be the length of the radius. So just R is going to be the length of my radius, okay? And again, you're just going to kind of stick with me. Try to just watch what I'm doing for these next few questions. And then if you want to try some on your own, always feel free to pause the video and do that as well. Okay, so as we look here at example 1, it says, given a circle that has a center of 2, 3, and a radius of 5. They want us to fill in the information in this equation below in order to write the equation of the circle. All right, and then we have to simplify it. So there's kind of a lot going on here. First, I have to fill in the information in this equation below. Well, I know that the center is AB, right? So it looks like I'm just plugging in an A, plugging in B. All right, so if my center is 2, 3, I'm just going to plug in my 2, which is my A value, and then I'm going to plug in my 3, which was my B value. And then it says that it equals whatever that radius number is, it's R squared. So I can see that my radius is 5, so I'm just going to fill that in. It's 5 squared. But most of the equation is already set up for me. All right, I'm just going to go back and underline. I filled in my center, which was 2, 3, and then I had to fill in my radius, which was 5. Okay, so now it looks like the first half of the question is done. We filled in all the information to the equation. Now I just have to simplify that work. All right, so what that means is if I look inside these parentheses, x minus 2 squared, I can't really simplify that, so I'm just going to rewrite it as x minus 2 squared. Same thing, the y minus 3 squared, I can't really do anything with it, so I'm just going to rewrite it as y minus 3 squared. But 5 squared, I can definitely simplify. What is 5 times 5? Good job, it's 25. So I'm going to fill that in. All right, so now I took this equation and I simplified it. Okay, this is the form that you would see on a test or a quiz. All right, moving on. Example 2. Same thing, only now we're on our own the whole time. So it says we want to write an equation for a circle. So here's the equation of a circle. All right, and they're telling me that the center is 9, 0 and the radius is 7. Okay, so I'm going to just follow the format from example 1. I know that I have x minus something squared. I have y minus something squared. And then I have my radius squared. All right, so I'm just going to fill in the center and the radius now. So if I know that my center is 9, 0, I'm just going to plug that in, 9, 0. And if I know that my radius is 7, it's going to be 7 squared. All right, so just as a reminder, I plugged in my center, which is 9, 0, and the radius, which was 7. And now I'm going to go ahead and simplify this as well. So we have x minus 9 squared plus y squared. Because what is y minus 0? It's just y. So I'm going to change it to just be y squared. And then equals Well, 7 squared is 49, right? 7 times 7 is 49. And again, this would be my final form. Moving on to example 3, I have to write an equation for the graph to the right. Well, if I want to write the equation, I need the center and the radius. So I can see here that my center is -2, 4. But what's the radius? Well, I know that the radius is from the center of a circle to the edge. Whoop. So I can see here that my radius was only 2 units long. And I know it's 2 because if I look at the axis, it's going by ones. So I know that each box counts for 1. So 2 boxes gives me a radius of 2. And now I'm going to go ahead and plug in. So it's going to be x minus something squared plus y minus something squared equals my radius squared. And now I'm going to go ahead and fill it in. So I can see here that my center is -2, 4. So I'm going to fill that in. It's -2, +4, and then my radius is 2. So it's 2 squared. And again, I'm just going to underline, here's my center, -2, 4, and here's my radius. And now I'm going to go ahead and simplify. Well, I know a negative and a negative make a positive. All right, so this is really just going to become x plus 2 squared. Underneath plus, this will stay, y minus 4 squared equals, and I know that 2 times 2 is 4, right? So 2 squared is 4. And then again, this would be my final form. And then as I look down at example 4, it's a little bit different. So before they were giving me the center and the radius, and I had to plug it in to the equation. Underneath, they're giving me the equation, and I have to take out the center and the radius. So I'm just going to write that. What's the center and what's the radius? Well, I can use the other questions here to help me. If you notice in example 1, when you look at the equation, it looks like the center is -2, -3, but it wasn't. It was originally +2, +3. When you look here, it looks like the center is -9, 0, but really it was +9, 0. Here, it looks like the center is 2, -4, but it was originally -2, +4. So are you guys seeing a pattern here? I hope that you are. It's that the sign changes. So 2, 3 becomes -2, -3. 9, 0 becomes -9, 0. -2, 4, +2, -4. So I'm going to apply that rule down below. This isn't going to be +12, -4. It's going to be -12. You got it, +4. We're just changing the sign. And then it's the same thing if I look at the radius. Well, the radius was 5. In the equation, it was 25, but the radius is actually 5. All right, same thing. 49 is not the radius, 7 is. 4 is not the radius, 2 is. All right, so instead of squaring the number, right, squaring, what's the opposite? Oh my gosh, guys, you totally have it. It's square rooting. So if they gave me 81, well, what's the square root of 81? So I can go backwards. It's 9. The square root of 4 is 2. Square root of 49, 7. Square root of 25, 5. All right, so be really careful. You have to take the square root to get the actual radius, that number that you started with. All right? Woo! Moving on. Got a lot of math to do on the next page. Oh my gosh. I was off the camera. Oh my gosh, can you guys see that? Okay, good. Whew. All right. Woo! Moving on. All right. Don't get too excited, but we're about to complete the square. So if I want to complete the square, I only need to do it really depending on one specific type of situation. So if you have a highlighter, and I know a lot of you have been highlighting, I am so blown away. Like, I love that. Love it, love it, love it. So if you have your highlighter, I would go ahead and grab that right now really quick. And then I would just highlight completing the square. All right. And you only have to complete the square if you don't have a perfect square trinomial. All right. And we're going to go over what that means in a minute. Let's start by just looking at the steps and following them through, and then kind of just working through these questions as we go. All right. So if I want to solve this guided practice question, it tells me I have to complete the square in order to do it. So I'm going to go ahead and just highlight that, complete the square, in order to put the equation in center radius form. All right. Which really tells me that I want this to look like a circle. All right, because if it's in center radius form, it's really going to be the equation of a circle. All right, let's look at the first step. First step says to isolate the constant to one side of the equation. So the constant is always just a number, okay? It does not have a variable. All right, so as I look down here, the only number that doesn't have a variable is the 104. So I want to move it to the other side. That's really what the first step is saying. So a positive 104 is now going to become a negative 104. I moved it over. I'm done with the first step. Number 2, I have to group like variables. All right, and it's telling me to reorder them. So as you look at this equation, do you guys see that there's x and y variables here? So I want to group my x's together, my like variables, and I want to group my y's together. All right, at this point in the video, if you guys have different colored like pens or different colored pencils, that's going to work really nicely for today's lesson. And if you don't, that's okay. Maybe you have 2 different color highlighters, and that will help you as well. And if you just have a pen or a pencil, guys, you're fine, all right? Because you're watching the video, you can always look back if you need help. But you know us teachers, we love our highlighters and we love our colored pens. All right, moving on. So I'm going to put my x's in green because I want to keep them together. So I'm going to rewrite this as x squared. Well, my next x value is the 14, so plus 14x. And then I don't have any more x's, I just have y's left over. All right, but this is where that perfect square trinomial is coming into play. If I want a trinomial, tri means 3. So I need 3 terms, and right now I only have 2. All right, so if I'm completing the square, I'm gonna add on an open box because I know that my 3rd term will fit inside as we move through this question eventually. All right, so right now I grouped my x's. Now with a different color like pink, I'm going to group my y's. So plus y squared. All right, my next y value is the negative 16y, so minus 16y. And then again, I ran out and I need a perfect square trinomial, 3 terms. So I have to fit in some 3rd term eventually. And then that's going to equal, well, 0 minus 104 is just negative 104, all right? And whatever you do to one side of the equation, you have to do to the other. So if I'm adding a green square on the left, I have to do it on the right. If I'm adding a pink square on the left, I have to do it on the right as well. All right, so at this point, we kind of just went over steps 1, 2, and 3 all at one time. All right, so moving into step 4, if I want to now take these terms and turn them into a perfect square trinomial, step 4 is going to help me do that, all right? So step 4 tells me that I have to use this formula, b divided by 2 squared. So I'm going to use that formula for my x's, and I'm going to use that formula for my y's, all right? So I'm going to start off by just writing it, b over 2 squared, and again, b over 2 squared. This is not on your reference sheet. It absolutely needs to be memorized. But you know, as you practice, guys, you're just going to automatically remember it without even realizing. So I want to take half of the coefficient, which is the number in front, of my x and y terms. Okay, so half of the coefficient of my x and then again, half of my coefficient of my y. All right. And then I want to square it. So here we go. 14 divided by 2 is 7. 7 squared is 49. Okay, and this is the number that goes in the missing box. On the left and on the right. Same thing underneath. Half of negative 16 is negative 8. Negative 8 squared is positive 64. And again, that's what goes in my missing box on the left and on the right. All right, there's a little song that we're going to be singing. Okay, it's going to be half it and square it. Half it and square it. Sing it with me, guys. Half it and square it. Half it and square it, right? Okay, moving on. So now that I halved it and squared it, it says I want to add the result to both sides, which we already did, my green and my pink. And then again, these values will always be positive because what's a positive times a positive, right? If I square it, well, positive times positive is positive. What's a negative times a negative? Oh, also a positive. So that's how I know it'll always be plus this extra number, plus this extra number, okay? Moving on to step 5. Now it tells me that I want to factor each perfect square trinomial because now I have my trinomial 3 terms, my trinomial 3 terms. So if I want to factor, I got to think, what's going to multiply to 49, but also add to 14? Well, guys, I'm just going to use the same trick that we used in number 4. I'm going to half it and square it. Half it? Well, what's half of 14? 7. And then square it because I get 2 of them. All right, and then again, I'm going to half it. Well, what's half of negative 16? Negative 8. And then I'm squaring it here because I have 2 of them. Okay. And then I'm going to combine my terms on the right-hand side. Well, negative 104 plus 49 plus 64 is just 9. All right. And I know that my factors here are correct because 7 times 7 is 49. 7 plus 7 is 14. Negative 8 times negative 8 is positive 64. Negative 8 minus 8 is negative 16. Okay. And now that I factored each guy, I factored my x's and my y's, now I want to rewrite this in center radius form. So I know center radius form has my x's grouped and my y's grouped. So another way to write x plus 7 times x plus 7 is just x plus 7 squared. Again, instead of me writing y minus 8 separately, I can group it and square it because I have 2 y minus 8s. And then again, it's still going to equal 9. And now I'm done. I have my center radius form. Okay, and I know that the question isn't asking you to write the center and the radius, but we might as well for practice. So I'm just going to fill this out here, center and radius. So remember from the other page, if I'm writing the center, it's really the opposite. It's not 7, negative 8, it's negative 7, positive 8. And again, this isn't the radius, it's the radius squared. So instead of squaring, I want to square root to go backwards. So my radius was originally 3. All right. And then that's done for the guided practice. All right, so example 5 is the exact same type of question again. So let's just kind of move through this one together. So it says identify the center and the radius. Well, I can't identify either one until I'm in center radius form. So I'm just going to follow all these steps again at the top. So the first step says to isolate the constant. So the constant is the number that has no variable like 4. So instead of adding 4, I'm going to subtract 4 on the opposite side. Step 1 is done. Number 2, group like variables. So I'm going to group my x's here. X squared minus 2x plus a box because I'm completing the square. Get it? So it's a square. Then I'm going to group my y's. Again, I got to have a trinomial, which is 3, and I don't have that right now, so I'm leaving room. And then that's going to equal, well, 24 minus 4 is just the number 20, all right? And don't forget, whatever I do to one side, I have to do to the other. So I'm going to add my green on both, and I'm going to add my pink on both. And then just like we did before, now we're at step 4. All right, so we're going to kind of shortcut this now a little bit. So I have to complete the square for x, which means I have to use the b over 2 squared formula. And I have to complete the square for y, which again means I have to use the b over 2 squared formula. So if I want to complete the square for x, my b value here is -2. So again, I'm gonna, guys, sing it with me. I'm gonna half it and square it. Half it and square it. So what's half of -2? It's -1. And -1 squared is +1. So again, this answer is what goes in my box. So I have a 1 on the left and a 1 on the right. Now I'm going to do it for y. My y value here that I'm going to plug in as my b, is my -4. So again, -4 divided by 2 squared is what I'm plugging in here. So I'm going to half it and square it. -4 divided by 2 is -2, but -2 squared is actually +4. All right, and again, that's what goes in my box. +4 on both. And then here's where the shortcut comes into play. Before I wrote the factors separate, and then I grouped them together. I'm going to skip this step. And I'm just going to jump to grouping them because they should always be exactly the same. So one more time, guys, sing it with me. I'm going to half it. Half of -2 is -1. And square it. I'm going to half it and square it. One more time. We're going to half it. Half of -4 is -2. And square it. Half it and square it. And then as I move on to the end, 20 plus 1 plus 4 is 25. And now I'm done. I have my center, radius, form. And now I can go ahead and fill out those final answers. So my center and my radius. Okay, center is going to be +1, +2, because I switched the sign. And my radius isn't 25, it's the square root of 25. And you guys got it, which is 5. You need to be showing this step every single time for that full credit, so please do that. All right, so we have our center and our radius up top, and we got our center and our radius down below. That's what we had to find. All right, as I flip to the next page, there's only one more. So at this point, if you guys want to try this on your own and then come back to the video after, that's up to you, but I'm just going to keep working here. All right. So now I don't have the steps, but I know what I have to do. As soon as I see an x squared and a y squared, I know that this is going to look like a circle. Okay. So first step says I have to isolate my variables to one side. So I know that means I have to move all of my numbers without a variable to the opposite side. So I can see the only number without a variable here is 10. So instead of adding 10 on the left, I'm going to subtract 10 on the right. All right. And then number 2 says I have to group my like terms. Well, I'm going to group my x's. So I have x squared. I have a +4x. Ooh, this one's a little different. I have an extra x value. That's okay. I'm going to write it -6x. And I'm still going to add on that extra box for completing the square, because if I have a trinomial, it's x squared, x, and then just a number, okay? And I don't have that here, so I know I'm going to still complete the square on this question. And now I'm going to go back for my y's. And again, this one's a little bit different because I just have that 1y squared value. All right. So I will not be completing the squared for y because there's no b value. It doesn't say y squared plus 4y minus 2y. There's no extra. So this one's even easier than the others because that means I'm only completing the square for x. And then that equals, well, 30 minus 10 is 20, all right? And then again, whatever I do to one side, I have to do to the other. Okay. On the side here, I'm going to show my work. So if I'm completing the square, I have to use that b over 2 squared formula, which has to be memorized. And right now I don't really have a b value because I have to combine my like terms here together. 4x minus 6x is negative 2x. All right, so I have x squared minus 2x plus my box. All right, so now I'm going to figure out what this imaginary, or this missing number I should say, is going to be. So my b value is negative 2. So I have negative 2 squared, or negative 2, I'm sorry, divided by 2 squared. So I'm going to half it and square it. So half of negative 2 is negative 1. Negative 1 squared is positive 1. Okay, and then I'm just going to finish, oops, right here as well. I'm going to finish just writing this out. Plus y squared equals 20 plus, and we know that in that missing box we're going to have that positive 1. All right, and now I'm going to go ahead and try to just simplify and call it a day. So I have my perfect square trinomial now, so I can use it again. I half it and square it for the box, and now I'm going to half it. Well, half of negative 2 is negative 1, and square it for my final answer. Okay, same thing. I'm going to bring down my y squared because that's all there was. And I know that 20 plus 1 is 21. All right, and then I'm done. I have to identify the center and the radius in simplest radical form. I'm going to highlight that because it's super important. So I'm just going to fill that out. Center, radius, and then again, I know my center is going to be positive 1, and there's no y value, so it's just 0. So it's positive 1, 0. And again, I have to take the square root. What's the square root of 21? It's not a perfect square, and I can't really break that down. So that is simplest radical form, okay? It's just the square root of 21. And this would be my final answer for example 6. You guys are crushing it. Please continue to show all work on each lesson, okay? Even if you're completing it in a notebook to earn credit. Please don't just send a homework. Don't just send the answer, guys. You got this. You're watching the video. Just copy it down. All right, miss you, love you, bye.